My family excluded my 7-year-old daughter from the annual reunion because she reminds everyone of my ex. Brother Sneered, she makes things weird for mom and dad. Mom mumbled, it might be simpler if you come alone this year. Dad said, some relatives still have strong feelings about the breakup and Chloe might stir up memories. I showed up anyway with my daughter, but my response at the family brunch exposed them all, and split the family forever. I'm a 34-year-old woman, and for the past 7 years, my life has revolved around raising my daughter, Chloe. She's 7 now, and I've had full custody since she was 2. Her dad, Jake, and I were together for a long time, but our relationship ended when he emotionally cheated on me with a coworker. It wasn't some messy scandal with shouting matches and public drama, just a slow unraveling, too many late nights at work, and texts he didn't bother hiding anymore. He admitted it, but by then, I'd already started preparing for custody. The courts gave me full custody, and Jake didn't fight me too hard. He's still in the picture a few times a year, but for the most part, it's been me and Chloe. I've never tried to paint Jake as the villain, especially to Chloe. We keep things civil, and he respects that she lives with me. Chloe's a good kid, bright, gentle, a little shy in crowds. I've done everything I can to make sure she grows up feeling safe and loved. So, when I tell you what happened recently with my family, I want you to understand that this didn't come out of nowhere. It felt like a punch I never saw coming. Every year, my family hosts a reunion. It rotates between different houses. Sometimes my cousin Eli hosts, sometimes my Aunt Janet. This year it's my older sister Hannah's turn. She and her husband moved to Vermont a few years ago and have a nice place with a big backyard, perfect for hosting a big family gathering. When the group chat popped up to start planning, I was actually looking forward to it. It had been a couple years since I'd seen everyone in person because of travel schedules and the pandemic. I figured this would be a great chance for Chloe to reconnect with her cousins and relatives. The group chat included all my siblings, our parents, and a few of the cousins. Everyone seemed excited, trading updates and sharing old photos. A few people asked about food allergies and travel plans. It was normal. I messaged that Chloe and I would fly in Friday morning and stay until Monday. Within a few minutes, I got a private message from my younger brother, Tyson. He wrote something like, "Hey, just thinking about the vibe for this year. Maybe it's better if Chloe doesn't come." At first, I honestly thought he was joking. I asked what he meant, and he said something that stuck in my throat. She reminds everyone too much of Jake. It might make things weird for mom and dad. I stared at my screen for a while, then I put my phone down and walked away. I didn't respond right away. I figured maybe Tyson was being overly dramatic or still had a chip on his shoulder from how things played out years ago. He's always been the one to avoid awkward stuff by pretending it doesn't exist. I didn't even mention the message to Chloe. She was busy drawing princess castles and asking me if Vermont had horses. I let it go for the night. But the next morning, I got a call from my mom. She sounded soft, almost rehearsed, said it might be simpler if I came alone this year. When I asked why, she mumbled something about tension and not wanting to reopen wounds. She never mentioned Jake by name. She didn't even say Chloe had done anything wrong. Just that this year it might be easier. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just let her talk until she ran out of vague justifications. Then I told her I'd think about it and hung up. I sat with it for a bit. Then I called a couple of single mother friends I trust. They were floored. One of them literally asked, "Do they think your daughter is a ghost of your ex or something?" That's when it hit me. I had no idea how deep this ran. Was it just Tyson and my mom? Was Hannah involved? Did my dad agree? Were my cousins aware of this? I wasn't going to ask everyone directly. That would tip them off. So, I decided to play dumb. I stayed in the group chat and casually brought up how excited Chloe was to see everyone again. I wanted to see who would respond, who would squirm, and who would say nothing at all. If some of them really thought it was okay to cut my daughter out because of who her dad used to be, I wanted to know exactly who they were. Because here's the thing, I can forgive a lot. I've made peace with how things ended with Jake. I've let go of old grudges, but excluding a child, a kid who hasn't done anything wrong, that's a whole different line. And the second they crossed it, they stopped being family in the way that mattered. So, I waited, watching that group chat like a test. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not yet. Chloe and I still had our flights booked. I wasn't going to cancel anything until I knew for sure what kind of reunion this was going to be and whether it was one worth showing up for at all. I waited until the middle of the week before sending a message to the family group chat. I kept it light and cheerful, looking forward to the reunion. Chloe's counting the days to see everyone again. Within minutes, my Aunt Janet reacted with a heart emoji. Then my cousin Sierra replied with, "Can't wait to see you both." Another cousin asked if Chloe still liked art projects because her daughter had some new supplies to share. At first glance, everything looked normal, friendly, familiar. Then a private message popped up from Hannah. She didn't mention the group chat at all. Instead, she circled back to the same thing Tyson had said, only wrapped in softer words. She wrote, "I thought we already talked about this. With everything going on, maybe this isn't the best time for Chloe to come." No mention of Jake this time. No real explanation, just vague concern disguised as politeness. I wrote back short and direct, "Who else feels this way?" She didn't answer the question, just said she didn't want to get into it, that she was just trying to keep things simple. That's when I called my dad. I kept the tone calm and asked straight out if there had been some kind of discussion about Chloe. He didn't deny it. Said some relatives still had strong feelings about the breakup and that Chloe might stir up memories that don't need revisiting. I reminded him that Chloe wasn't responsible for anything. She was a toddler when Jake left. My father didn't argue that part. He just kept repeating the same line, that the reunion should feel easy, like my daughter was a burden just by being there. After that call, I rang Eli. He's one of the few people in the family who doesn't take sides. He's the one who remembers everyone's birthdays, always brings neutral gifts, and somehow keeps peace without being fake. When I told him what Hannah and Tyson had said, there was a long pause. Then he told me he had no idea this was going on. He hadn't heard anything about Chloe being excluded. In fact, he said our grandmother, who's 82 and doesn't miss a thing, had specifically asked last week if Chloe was coming. She was already planning to teach her how to braid friendship bracelets. That flipped a switch. I went back and reread every message I'd gotten since the reunion plans started. Then I started saving them. Screenshots, timestamps, everything. I didn't respond to Hannah again. I didn't mention it in the group chat. I didn't even text Tyson. I wasn't planning a blow-up, but I wasn't going to let anyone twist the truth later. I also messaged Jake just to give him a heads up. I didn't want him to get blindsided if Chloe overheard something or came home confused. He didn't say much at first, just asked me to repeat it. Then he told me that he hoped I'd handle it however I thought was best. He offered to call Chloe that night and tell her a silly story like he usually did to keep her spirits up. Later that day, I sat down with Chloe to help her pack for the trip. I didn't mention the drama. She picked out her favorite sweater, the one with the rainbow unicorn on it, and stuffed 2 of her stuffed animals into the side of her backpack. I booked a small cabin about 15 minutes from Hannah's place. Quiet, with its own fire pit and a view of a nearby lake, just the right size for the 2 of us. If the reunion turned into a disaster, at least we'd have somewhere peaceful to go back to. And if we ended up doing our own version of the weekend, that was fine, too. I debated canceling the trip altogether, but that felt like giving in. So, I decided we'd still go, not to make a scene or prove a point, just to exist, just to be visible. I wasn't going to argue for my daughter's place in a family she already belonged to. I'd show up and I'd let everyone decide what kind of people they wanted to be. Chloe didn't know any of this. She spent the rest of the evening making a paper card for Grandma with drawings of stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. She asked if she could give it to her when we arrived. I said yes. I didn't know yet if she'd welcome it, but she deserved the chance to offer it anyway. I packed our bags quietly, clothes for 3 days, snacks for the road, Chloe's colored pencils, and her book about fairy tales. I double-checked the weather for Vermont. Cool mornings, warm afternoons. I made a list of nearby parks and trails in case we needed time away from the house. I also added a backup list, museums, libraries, indoor play areas just in case. I didn't say goodbye in the group chat. I didn't send more reminders. I already knew who had shown their hand. I just waited for Friday. We were going to Vermont. One way or another. Reunion weekend came fast. I picked Chloe up from her last day of school before the trip and we packed the car early Friday morning. The drive to Vermont took just under 5 hours with stops, and Chloe stayed busy with her coloring book and a bag of goldfish crackers she insisted on rationing like a princess saving treasures. We reached the cabin by mid-afternoon. It sat off a gravel road surrounded by tall pine trees with a small lake just a 5-minute walk away. Nothing fancy, but peaceful, exactly what we needed. Once we got settled in, I sent a message in the family group chat, "We're in town. Wishing you all a great first night together." I didn't say we were staying elsewhere. I didn't mention any plans to stop by, just left it open. Within 10 minutes, Eli called me. He thought we were coming straight to Hannah's house. I explained everything calmly, the messages from Tyson and Hannah, the call from my mother, and how no one else seemed to know Chloe wasn't welcome. Eli was silent for a bit. Then he told me that multiple cousins had brought +1s this year. One cousin even brought her new boyfriend of 2 months. But the real kicker, Hannah's new husband's teenage daughter was staying in the guest room. Most of the family hadn't even met her before. Later that evening, Chloe and I walked to the lake behind our cabin and spent a couple of hours collecting pretty stones and looking for frogs. She didn't find any frogs, but that didn't stop her from narrating every ripple and lily pad like it was a nature documentary. I snapped a photo of her standing at the edge of the water holding a smooth rock with both hands and wearing her unicorn sweater. I posted it with a simple caption, "Nothing better than this kind of weekend." A few hours later, I got a private message from Hannah. No greeting, just her accusing me of being passive-aggressive. I replied once, "You excluded my child. That's not subtle either." Then I muted the thread. I wasn't going to argue by phone while my daughter was building a fairy house out of twigs and moss outside the cabin. Around 10 p.m., Eli messaged again. Apparently, after our call, he'd started reaching out to other cousins. Most of them were just as surprised as he was. A few were furious. One cousin sent me a message saying she had assumed Chloe wasn't coming because I had scheduling issues, not because she was being pushed out. By Saturday morning, 3 separate cousins had messaged me with some form of apology or support. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Chloe woke up early, so we grabbed breakfast at a diner nearby, then drove out to a nature reserve about 20 minutes away. She brought a sketchbook to draw flowers in. While she sketched a butterfly on a wildflower, I spotted Aunt Janet a few feet away walking the trail with her husband. She didn't pretend not to see me, walked right up and asked if we were enjoying the trip. I told her we were. She looked at Chloe and smiled, then looked back at me and said she hadn't agreed with what happened. I asked her why she hadn't said anything sooner. She hesitated, then admitted she didn't want to cause a rift, and she'd assumed everyone had already agreed to it. According to her, Tyson and Hannah had a few phone calls with our parents and made it sound like it was already settled, just presented it as something everyone had quietly signed off on. So, this wasn't a quiet group consensus. It was just 2 people pulling strings and others letting it happen. That night, Eli called again. He told me there was one last brunch happening the next morning at Hannah's house. Casual backyard thing, nothing formal. He said I should come, not to smooth things over, but just to show up for closure. I told him I'd bring Chloe, but I made it clear I wasn't showing up to act like nothing happened. If they wanted to see us, they'd have to look us both in the eye. After the call, I helped Chloe sort her little flower drawings into a folder. She said she wanted to show Grandma the one of the daisies since it was the prettiest one. I didn't take it from her. I just told her we'd be seeing some people tomorrow and she could bring whichever drawings she wanted. I didn't sleep much that night. I wasn't angry, just alert, focused. This wasn't about calling people out or burning bridges. It was about standing next to my daughter without letting anyone push her behind me. And if someone at that table couldn't handle it, they could be the one to walk away. We arrived at Hannah's house just before noon. The backyard was already busy, folding tables lined with pastries, coffee carafes steaming, and the usual plastic chairs pulled into circles. I parked down the street, and Chloe carried the folder with her drawings tucked under one arm. She asked if she could show Grandma the daisy one. When we got there, I told her she could show whoever she liked. The moment we walked through the side gate into the backyard, the noise changed. Conversation slowed. A few people turned, others suddenly got quiet mid-sentence. I didn't stop walking. I held Chloe's hand and nodded toward a table near the back. No one said anything right away, but a few cousins looked over. One of the younger kids gave Chloe a small wave. She waved back and smiled like she always does. I told the group nearby that we wouldn't be staying long, just wanted to stop by. I didn't raise my voice or make an announcement. I just said it clearly, loud enough for a few people around to hear. Tyson made his way over almost immediately. He lowered his voice and asked if we could talk privately. I told him no. Whatever conversation he thought we needed should have happened when they made the decision to leave my daughter out. No more behind-the-back arrangements. If people had something to say, they could say it with everyone present. That's when Hannah raised her voice, claiming this had never been about exclusion. She said she only wanted to avoid tension and that I was making it into something bigger than it was. Before I could reply, Eli stepped in. He pointed at the girl sitting with Hannah's husband, her new stepdaughter, someone no one here knew until 2 days ago. He asked why she was welcomed with open arms while Chloe had been treated like a problem. I turned toward my parents, who were sitting at the patio table under the canopy. I asked them straight out, "Do you really believe Chloe being here ruins your weekend?" My mother looked down at her napkin. My father kept looking ahead like he hadn't heard me. Neither said a word. Chloe leaned close and asked if we should leave. I told her we'd stay just a few minutes longer. I didn't want her to feel like we had to run. While we stood there, one of the older aunts, Miriam, got up and quietly fixed a plate for Chloe. She added a little fruit, a muffin, and some cheese cubes, then motioned her over to sit beside her granddaughters. She hesitated for a second, then walked over and sat down. Within a few minutes, 2 other kids were asking her about her flower drawings. She opened the folder and started explaining each sketch. More cousins began to gather around that table. One asked Chloe what school was like. Another asked what books she liked. I watched as the mood shifted. Not a dramatic change, but slow and real. Some people got up and moved their seats closer. No one made a speech. No one apologized out loud. They just started treating her like family again. Tyson stayed near the edge of the group, arms crossed. He muttered something about how I was the one causing division. I told him, "I showed up. You're the one who tried to cut people out." I didn't wait for an answer. There was nothing else to say. We stayed just long enough for Chloe to finish her food and show a few drawings. She laughed when someone made a joke about her butterfly sketch having rainbow wings. When I stood up to leave, I thanked Aunt Miriam for the plate and told Chloe to say goodbye. She gave a wave and a few kids waved back. Before we walked out, I turned to the group one last time. I didn't raise my voice or try to make a scene. I just said, "You can't have unity built on exclusion. I hope next year looks different." Then we walked out the same way we came in hand, quiet and steady. Chloe asked if we could go back to the lake. I said yes. She packed her folder away, grabbed her collection bag for pretty stones, and climbed into the back seat. No one tried to stop us. No one followed us out. And for the first time that weekend, I didn't care if they did or didn't. When we got back home from Vermont, the first thing waiting in my inbox was a long email from Hannah. It started off friendly, then quickly turned into several paragraphs blaming me for publicly making her look cruel. She repeated the same thing in different ways. She only wanted to protect the mood, never meant to exclude Chloe forever, and thought I would understand the emotional complexity of the situation. She didn't use the word apology once. I saved the email in a folder I created for this whole thing, then deleted it from my inbox. No reply, no follow-up. A few days later, Eli called. He said the family group chat had splintered. Some relatives were backing Hannah, saying I overreacted and made it into a public drama. Others had started calling out how quiet the rest of the family had been while it all unfolded. The chat eventually died when people started arguing and logging off. Then Sierra stepped in. She started a brand new chat with only the people she knew had supported Chloe or spoken up afterward. No Tyson, no Hannah, not even our parents. The name of the group was Future Reunions, Real Family Only. The first message she sent was a warm invite to everyone and a suggestion that we start planning next year's event together. She ended the message by writing, "Dana and Chloe, you're not just included, you're expected." I messaged back and thanked her, but I didn't confirm anything. I told her I appreciated what she was doing and I'd think about it. I wanted to see if people really followed through, not just words this time. Plans, structure, follow-up. That's what I'd pay attention to. That same week, I got a message from Jake. He asked if everything was okay and said he had something strange to share. He forwarded me an email he'd received from my father. It was short, just a few lines. He said he regretted how things had played out in Vermont and that he hoped Chloe didn't feel left out because of the choices the adults made. He didn't address me at all. He sent that to Jake. He asked if my father was trying to open a back channel or if he was just avoiding a direct apology. I told him he didn't need to get involved. I wasn't interested in reading between the lines of someone else's regret. Chloe had an art camp coming up. Week-long program in a nearby city. Her first time doing something away from home like that. We spent the week shopping for supplies, going over the checklist, and labeling everything with a permanent marker. Chloe picked out a new set of watercolors and a sketchbook from the local store. She asked if she could bring her daisy drawing to show the camp instructor. One night before bed, while we were packing her paintbrushes and apron, Chloe brought up the brunch. She asked why Grandma looked so sad when she saw her. That's how she phrased it. I said, sometimes people act sad when they don't know what to say. That's not your fault. She nodded and moved on to talking about the pottery class scheduled at the camp. That weekend, I joined a single mothers group I found online. They met once a week in a library's community room. No drama, just real conversations, women talking about school schedules, custody setups, birthday parties. Nobody needed to explain why they were tired or why they handled things a certain way. It felt good not having to defend basic parenting decisions to anyone. On Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Tyson, just his name, no message. I didn't respond. That was the last time he was able to reach me directly. I stared at it for a second, then put the phone down. A few hours later, I went back in, blocked the number, and deleted the contact completely. I hadn't blocked him before. I was waiting to see if there was anything worth saving. But this wasn't a misunderstanding that needed patching. This was a decision that needed remembering. Chloe left for camp 2 days later. She hugged me at drop-off and told me not to forget to water her sunflower seeds. I promised to send her photos of their progress like we planned. Then she ran off with her backpack bouncing behind her, waving to the counselor holding the clipboard. I waited until she was out of sight before heading back to the car. There was nothing left to argue about. No loose ends to explain. Anyone who wanted to be part of our life already knew what to do. And the ones who didn't, well, they'd made that clear, too. A few weeks after Chloe came back from art camp, a wedding invitation arrived in the mail. The envelope was addressed just to me. No +1 guest. No mention of Chloe. The invite was for Tyson's wedding set for the spring at a vineyard about 2 hours away. Everything about it was formal, cream card stock, gold lettering, a stamped RSVP card tucked inside. I flipped through it twice, checking both the envelope and insert. Nothing about Chloe, not even a line about children not being accommodated. I called Eli and Sierra separately. Eli said his invitation listed both his name and his wife's, and their 2 daughters were included on the RSVP options. Sierra's invitation included her husband and their daughter, plus a space for a +1 in case her older son wanted to bring someone. That told me everything I needed to know. I sent Tyson a short message just confirming, was this meant as an adults-only event or is my daughter excluded again? His reply came within the hour, it's adults only. Don't twist it into something it's not. I didn't answer back. I opened the cousin group chat and posted one sentence, if my daughter isn't welcome, I won't be attending. Sierra withdrew her RSVP within the hour. Eli followed. Then a cousin from out of state messaged me privately and said she wasn't comfortable going either. A 4th cousin, someone who rarely takes sides, said she was done with the favoritism and wasn't going to play along anymore. I didn't campaign for anything. I didn't follow up with anyone. I just said what needed to be said. Eli called me later that week. He said Tyson had started a private email thread trying to control the narrative. He told a few relatives that I was using Chloe as a weapon and poisoning the family over one disagreement. I told Eli to forward this response, actions speak for themselves. People are deciding what kind of family they want to be part of. A few days after that, I came home from work to find my father waiting near the front gate of my building. He wasn't holding flowers or a speech, just a cardboard box. Inside were 2 things, a small stuffed unicorn Chloe used to play with when she was 3, and a book from my childhood, one my dad used to read to me before bed. He didn't ask to come in. I didn't offer. We stood on the porch. He said nothing at first. I nodded and took the box. Then I said, Chloe needs people who show up with respect, not regret. My father didn't argue. He just nodded once, turned and left. That night, I showed Chloe what was inside the box. She lit up when she saw the stuffed unicorn. She held it up to the lamp and started making it dance across the coffee table. Then she asked, why didn't Grandpa stay? I told her, we're working on how to be around people who still have some growing to do. She nodded and went back to making the unicorn gallop across the couch cushions. After she went to bed, I pulled out an empty scrapbook I had bought months ago and started putting together a memory album for her. I printed photos of our trip to Vermont, just the ones of us by the lake, walking trails, and sitting by the fire. I added drawings from her school friends, sticky notes with jokes she'd written, and a few messages from Eli and Sierra that I'd saved. I printed one of the photos from the brunch, just the shot of her smiling with the kids at the table, mid-laugh. I didn't label anything. I figured she could add to it however she liked. Toward the end of the week, Sierra called. She said some of the cousins had quietly started planning a new holiday event, something separate from the usual one hosted by her parents. No long tables at Hannah's house. No email chains run by Tyson. They wanted something casual, something real. She asked if I'd be willing to co-host it with her and Eli. She made it clear no one would be included by default. This time it would be built around the people who showed up when it mattered. I didn't say yes right away. I asked her to send me the plan when it was ready. She promised to include Chloe's name on the very first draft. She said that would be the baseline, not a question, not a debate, just part of the family again, like it should have always been. Sierra finalized the venue details for the holiday event, a small community center just outside town. Nothing flashy, but clean, bright, and neutral. No one's house, no one's turf, just a space that wouldn't carry the weight of past family gatherings. When she sent the rental confirmation, I told her I was in. Eli agreed to help cover part of the cost, and the three of us decided early on who wouldn't be invited. There was no public announcement. We made a new invite-only group chat. No vague language, no bring whoever you want. Everyone was named. Every child was listed. Chloe's name was in the first message in bold. The invite said, "This is for the people who chose to stand up when it mattered." The responses came fast. Cousins I hadn't heard from in months started replying within hours. Some thanked us for putting it together. Others asked what they could bring or if decorations were needed. One cousin offered to handle music. Another volunteered to make cookies with the kids. I didn't expect it to feel like anything more than a backup plan, but it grew quickly, faster than Tyson's wedding guest list had ever moved. Chloe asked if she could help. She picked the tablecloth colors, helped sort boxes of candy canes into little bags, and even helped design stickers with snowflakes and unicorns on them. Sierra printed them, and let Chloe hand one to each kid as they walked in the door on event day. Meanwhile, Eli told me Tyson's wedding had started to fall apart quietly. Cousins were pulling out. A few had risked, then backed out without giving a reason. Eli heard from a vendor that the catering headcount had to be adjusted twice in a week. Word was getting around about ongoing family tension, and no one wanted to step into the middle of it. A few days before the holiday event, I got a call from an uncle I hadn't spoken to since the reunion. He brought up Hannah's name immediately. He said she'd been thinking about how things had unfolded and wondered if I might consider rejoining the larger group. I told him I appreciated the call, but I wasn't interested in going back to a space that pretended silence was kindness. He said he understood, then paused, then hung up. The holiday event landed on a Saturday afternoon in mid-December. We opened the doors at 1 o'clock. By 1:30, the room was full. Nearly 30 people came, grandparents, cousins, their partners, kids. All of them greeted Chloe first. No one danced around it. One of the grandmothers hugged her tightly and told her she still had the painted rock she made for her 2 years ago. Another aunt handed her a little present wrapped in paper with rainbow hearts on it. Chloe wore a dress with a cartoon reindeer on the front and carried the song lyrics from school in her back pocket. After dinner, while the kids were playing musical chairs, she stood up near the front and sang one of the holiday songs she'd been practicing. A few adults clapped in rhythm. One aunt got teary-eyed and dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. When she finished, someone started a round of applause without needing to be asked. After dessert, Eli stood up with his glass raised. He kept it short, just said that family wasn't built on blood alone. It was built on showing up, listening, and loving people exactly as they are. He said the gathering wasn't about replacing anyone, but about making room for everyone who had been pushed aside. Then he looked at me and said, "Thank you, Dana, for reminding us what love without conditions looks like." No one posted about the event publicly. Everyone agreed to keep it within the group, mostly to avoid stirring things up. Photos were shared privately, pictures of the kids playing games, the food table, Chloe's art station where she'd been sketching snowmen in between conversations. Still, a few days later, one of the cousins, someone we had included, even though they'd stayed neutral, shared the photos to the old family group chat. Just a handful, no captions, but it didn't take long for the message to land. Eli told me that within an hour of the photos going up, Tyson sent a rant to the group, accusing everyone of betrayal, of undermining the family structure, and letting emotions hijack tradition. He went on for a full paragraph. Eli didn't reply. Sierra removed herself from the chat entirely. 2 more cousins followed. The next morning, I found an email from Tyson. I didn't open it, just saw his name, saw the subject line in all caps, and clicked delete. Then, I went to the block list, added his address, and cleared the folder. Whatever he had to say, I had already heard enough the first time. That door had been closed long before the RSVP deadline. In early January, I got a voicemail from my father. The message was short and calm. He said he wanted to meet one-on-one. No expectations, no speeches, just lunch. I didn't respond right away. I thought about it for a few days, then called him back and told him I'd meet him on a Thursday at noon at a small cafe near my work. I made the rules clear: public place, 1 hour, and no circular conversations about the past. If it turned into a blame game, I'd leave. He showed up on time, already seated when I walked in. No hugging, no ceremony. We ordered food, and for the first few minutes, we stuck to safe topics: weather, how busy the cafe was. When the food arrived, he leaned in slightly and admitted that he'd let fear guide too much of his behavior last year. He said he should have spoken for himself instead of letting Hannah and Tyson act like family representatives. I didn't interrupt. I let him finish, then said that words didn't fix what happened. Only consistent action could. He nodded and asked if I thought it would be all right for him to write something directly to Chloe. Not to explain things, just to acknowledge what had happened. I said it would be fine, but with one condition: no excuses, no blame shifting, and no mentions of misunderstandings, just honesty. A few days later, a small envelope arrived in the mail with just Chloe's name on the front. Inside was a handwritten note, only a few sentences. My father wrote that he didn't protect Chloe the way a grandfather should have, and that he regretted not stepping in when it counted. There were no explanations, no soft language, just the truth. I read it first, then gave it to Chloe the next morning while she was eating cereal. She read it quietly and slid it back to me. Then she said, "Okay, that was nice." A minute later, she asked if we could visit Grandpa sometime. I said we could, but we'd start small. The following weekend, we met my father at a park near his neighborhood. Chloe brought a jump rope. My father brought 2 ice cream sandwiches. They talked about flowers, art camp, and what Chloe wanted to make for the school art show. We kept it short. No talk about the reunion, no talk about the wedding, just 1 hour of being present. That turned into a weekly routine. 1 hour, 1 park, no expectations. Sometimes it was ice cream, other times just a walk around the pond. Chloe started bringing little drawings to show him. They weren't close yet, but it was movement, and no one was pretending things hadn't gone wrong. While that was happening, Sierra kept me updated on the family dynamics. The group chat that once centered around Tyson and Hannah had gone mostly silent. People stopped responding to their updates. Photos from their side of the family got polite emoji reactions, but nothing else. Nobody said anything directly, but the shift was obvious. One of my coworkers, who also does part-time wedding planning, mentioned that a venue she'd worked with recently downsized a guest list because of family tension. She said the groom's side had lost more than half their guests in the final month. When I asked if the wedding was at a vineyard 2 towns over, she nodded. I didn't say much, just told her sometimes the fallout isn't loud, but it lands where it should. A few days later, I found out that Hannah had tried to send me a message. She used a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. The cousin called me to say she'd been asked to pass along a note, but she decided against it. Said she didn't want to be a go-between and didn't want to get involved. I thanked her for letting me know and told her she'd made the right call. That was the moment I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for their version of closure, not for their approval, not even for an apology. I'd stopped expecting months ago. Things had changed. Not perfectly, not neatly, but enough. Chloe was building relationships with people who cared. She was laughing at parks again, planning projects, making memories, the kind you don't second-guess later. And me, I was finally living like none of it was about being let back in. Because the truth was, we'd already built our own space, one that didn't depend on anyone else's permission. Summer came faster than expected. Chloe finished the school year with a stack of certificates and glowing comments from every teacher. Her art project, a collage made from recycled materials, was featured at the school showcase. A week after the last bell rang, I got called into a meeting at work and walked out with a promotion I hadn't even applied for. It came with better hours, more flexibility, and a salary bump. The timing couldn't have been better. We started planning a road trip that night, just the two of us, across the coast, hitting national parks we'd only read about before. Chloe pulled out a map and started circling spots with a pink highlighter. I booked the rentals. We marked each leg of the trip with sticky notes labeled with things like big waterfalls and pretty rocks. The plan was simple: drive, explore, camp, repeat. Meanwhile, Sierra filed paperwork for what she called the chosen family gathering. The same community center was already booked, so she secured a public park with a sheltered area and open green space. Chloe asked if she could help design the invite. She sketched a heart-shaped logo with flowers, butterflies, and a simple message: everyone who loves belongs. Sierra loved it and had it printed on all the invitations. Every invite listed attendees by name. No vague +1 or your household. Every child was named. Every person was counted. There were no soft invites. No quiet omissions. The instructions were clear: this was a gathering where no one would be erased. Then something unexpected arrived in the mail. A letter from my mother. Not a text, not an email. A handwritten note on lined paper folded neatly in a plain envelope. I opened it late at night sitting at the kitchen counter while Chloe read a picture book on the couch. She wrote that she had let her discomfort drown out her instincts. That she had allowed fear of confrontation to become an excuse for silence. That by choosing the easier path, she failed both of us. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't use words like misunderstanding. Just wrote that she regretted being quiet when she should have been loud. I read it twice. I didn't respond for a week. When I did, I said I'd meet her, but only if Chloe came too. No closed doors, no whispers. If she wanted to talk, we'd all sit at the table. We met at a garden cafe halfway between our homes. My mother arrived with a small paper bag in hand. She hugged me briefly, then turned to Chloe. She lowered herself onto one knee and said, "I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry." Chloe looked at her, then said, "You can sit with me next time if you're being nice." She nodded, eyes glassy, but didn't say anything else. That was enough. I reminded her of one rule: if Chloe's in the room, there's no secrecy, no side chats, everything above board always. She nodded again. We finished our lunch, light conversation only. Chloe showed her a pressed flower she had in her notebook. She asked her if it was from one of her favorite gardens. A few days later, Eli told me Hannah and Tyson had quietly stopped showing up in any of the extended family chats. No exit message, just silence. Messages from cousins got more casual, freer. No one tiptoed around it anymore. I got a few private messages from relatives, ones who'd stayed quiet until now. They said they had admired how I handled everything, even when they couldn't find the courage to speak up themselves. I told each of them the same thing: thank you, and that I remembered everything, but didn't hold it all against them. Silence could be fear, but silence also had consequences. When the chosen family gathering finally came, we arrived early to help set up tables and hang decorations. Chloe handed out welcome stickers and helped test the speaker system. When it came time to kick things off, Sierra asked her if she'd like to open the gathering. She stood in front of nearly 40 people, cleared her throat, and said, "Thanks for coming. I like this place. I hope everyone has fun." Nobody flinched. Nobody looked away. The applause was real, not polite. On the drive home, Chloe stared out the window for a while before asking, "Why didn't they want me before?" I kept both hands on the wheel and answered, "Some people confuse the past with the present, but you're everything good that's coming next." She nodded once, then pointed at a billboard with a butterfly conservatory on it and said, "Next trip?" I smiled and told her, "Absolutely."